8.5 years ago, Skyrim had just hit store shelves, and around that same time, Tailworlds would announce their next video game, Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. But this game was in for a rocky development, and after only a few years of production, Bannerlord had been scrapped not once, but twice. And over the next few years, Tailworlds would shift focus from the game itself to instead working on building their own game engine. And when that was finally finished, they were now ready to make the game they had envisioned so long ago. And after all that time and hard work, Bannerlord is finally here for us to enjoy. This game may not be perfect or even finished for that matter, but it still has some amazing concepts and innovations that other medieval fantasy game developers should really be taking notice of. And the best way to highlight some of these feats is by comparing it to one of the greatest video games ever made. So here are the 5 things that Bannerlord does better than Skyrim. Horse riding in video games is historically almost always terrible, and The Elder Scrolls is no exception. Skyrim's horses feel like you're in a rodeo on a confused rhinoceros. Turning is a challenge, the animations look ridiculous, and the horse's stamina runs out after 2 milliseconds. But worst of all, Bethesda removed the first-person camera, which meant we were forced to watch this awkward-looking excuse of a horse bob and glitch throughout the land. But Bannerlord, on the other hand, has some of the best horse riding I've ever seen. Well, not as good as Red Dead Redemption 2, but that's not a fair comparison. However, these horses still feel really good, especially in third-person mode, and that's all thanks to the animation. These horses don't just turn like they're on wheels, they pivot and bend, and you can see the horse try to adjust their momentum. And when you come to a stop, you can feel them attempt to slow themselves down. But appearances aside, Bannerlord's horses are also actually useful. When you're traversing the map, having a horse for not just you, but your companions means you can travel a whole lot faster. And in combat, having a horse is basically a necessity, as it's pretty much the only way to stay alive, which is almost the exact opposite of Skyrim's mounted combat, which makes hitting your enemies practically impossible, and will surely lead to your inevitable death. Skyrim has a unique way of handling progression. Every time you level up in this game, your enemies will level up also, with the idea being that no matter how tough you get, the game will always feel challenging. But you might have noticed that there's a big flaw with this system, because despite your stats getting higher and your gear getting better, it feels like nothing has actually changed. Now, Bethesda did incorporate some limitations to the system. For example, once you reach a certain level, your enemies will stop leveling up at all. But usually by the time you reach that point, you've already maxed out your attack and defense, and the only thing left to increase is your stamina bar, which means this fight still won't get any easier. And to be fair, the whole point is to prevent the game from feeling too easy, but really it's not solving the actual problem. How do you let the player get more powerful while still making the game exciting? Well, Bannerlord has a solution. In this game, all your potential opponents at their respective levels are immediately on the field. Enemies can still level up and get stronger, but they're doing so at their own pace. Even when you aren't doing anything at all, they can still increase their armies and train their soldiers. But also, these armies can fight each other, ensuring that they will never get too big. And as your army becomes more proficient and you become more skilled, taking on these tougher and larger enemies becomes more achievable. But what matters far more than the size of your army or the damage your sword deals is the actual fighting ability of you and your enemies. A highly trained warrior is a far more skilled fighter than a pitchfork-wielding peasant, meaning they can block your attacks more proficiently, and their attacks will be far more intense. And if you want to survive these encounters, you not only need to have better stats, but you need to be better at the game. But as you get stronger and these Goliath foes become far easier to handle, new challenges also begin to introduce themselves. From managing your kingdom to maintaining your town's prosperity, the gameplay is constantly shifting to match your new powers and forcing you to think about how to play in new ways. And Skyrim definitely does not do that. Bannerlord's smithing is by far the best crafting I've ever seen in a video game. Instead of just making some basic swords and armor that can be found literally anywhere else in the game, or upgrading your current equipment's stats, you are making a weapon that is entirely unique and your own, designed to your exact specifications, from the look of the hilt to the size of the pommel, all the way down to the exact length of the blade. And every minor change has a big impact on the performance of your sword, whether it's better for cutting or stabbing, or how easy it is to use. You can basically make your dream weapon that's perfect for your character. Now that's crafting that's actually enjoyable, and it really sheds a light on the boringness of Skyrim's crafting. Unfortunately though, I do have to admit Bannerlord does have one minor flaw, which is when it comes to actually leveling up your smithing skill, it takes a long time. After 90 hours of gameplay, I have barely unlocked any of the customization options that are available. If you thought it was tedious in Skyrim, man, do you have another thing coming with this game. Skyrim's combat is not very complex. Mainly you just attack like a crazy person till either the enemy dies or you do, and if you're having a really tough time, then maybe you'll down a few health potions. Now, of course, you could always block, but honestly, it's just way less efficient, especially since there aren't any real downsides to getting hit. You know, aside from taking damage. Bannerlord, on the other hand, does not work like that. For one, there's no magic potion to instantly heal your health back up to 100%. And if you take a hit from a sword, it not only takes a massive chunk out of your health bar, but it also knocks you down for a second, allowing your enemies to continue bashing you to death. Which means constantly attacking your opponent like a deranged psychopath is not a good idea. So if you actually want to stay alive, you need to do some blocking. Because nothing feels more adrenaline pumping than when you're on a sliver of health and your shield is about to break, but if you can just kill this one guy, then victory will be yours. And son of a Bannerlord may not have the most realistic combat system, but it still provides an exciting and rewarding experience that Skyrim just fails to compete with. Which is why, despite my dreams of making an epic sword-wielding blacksmith, I usually just end up sneaking around with the bow. Marriage isn't that great in Skyrim. Basically, you buy a necklace, and then you take it to a small list of eligible bachelorettes, and then bingo bango, you're married. And what do you do now that you are married? Nothing. There's no quests, barely any dialogue, and definitely no special interactions. The only actual benefit is the money your wife randomly hands you from an imaginary store that does not actually exist in reality. Bannerlord, on the other hand, is totally different. Instead of just giving some random lady a necklace, what you have to do is persuade her into marrying you. Now, to be fair, the marriage itself in this game is not very exciting either, but there are way more benefits. For one, it helps your political standing with the kingdom you're married into, which can make it easier to make a name for yourself. Additionally, if you die, then your spouse becomes your heir, and you can continue your legacy with them. But the real reason to get married? Kids. As long as you spent literally 1 second of time near your spouse, then after a few days, you'll get a baby. And that baby will grow into a child, and that child will eventually grow into a teenager, and that teenager will become a man. Or woman. A man/woman that can help you in your conquest for world domination. And if you die this time, then you can take control of one of your kids instead. So you're probably wondering, well, how long does it take for your kids to grow up? 18 years! 18 just to be a teenager. You'll probably be finished with the game and creating a whole new character before that happens. But if for some ridiculous reason that you do happen to wait that long, then you will unfortunately discover that your children are completely useless because there's currently a bug in the game that makes them have 0 skills, 0 attributes, and be impossible to level up. Which means they can't gain any skills or attributes either, so they are stuck at 0 forever. In other words, kids suck. Bannerlord may not be the most polished or complete or animated or bug-free or visually impressive game on the market, but it does provide a very enjoyable kingdom building experience. And there's a lot that the big wig AAA developers can learn from this indie game. But if you want to know about more things that Skyrim fails at, I recommend 5 things Kingdom Come does better than Skyrim.